Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this month's Product Pulse, where we deep dive into Ocrolus's product capabilities. This month, we'll be diving into Detect. If you have any questions during the session, please don't hesitate to drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll address them during the session. Let's get started. Take it away, Nike.
So as we set up the product pulse, we are going to talk about what our Detect product is. We'll show you a couple examples, and I am going to start with very high level, what is Detect? So many of you may be familiar with our Detect product, and if this is your first introduction, I'm very pleased to tell you more about it. Detect is our solution that is intended to guide underwriters, fraud analysts, leasing agents, anyone really looking at documents manually to streamline their fraud review. It's a machine-only solution. We can find evidence of tampering, suspicious activity, all kinds of crazy things in documents, and we do that for bank statements, pay stubs, and W-2s. It's an API-based capability. We also have a nice dashboard that shows you exactly where we found the suspicious activity, and you can verify for yourself. And it's really, really good at finding all kinds of suspicious activity, which I'll tell you more about, and particularly in ePDFs also, but we do have supportive images as well for many types of signals. And not only do we give you a bunch of different fraud signals, we also distill it down into a nice, easy to understand, easy to digest score. So, a very important thing for me to cover for you is that we think about fraud or suspicious activity in two main buckets, if you will. So, we think about fraud in terms of tampering of the document itself, file tampering, how has the document been manipulated in ways that are both visible and invisible to the human eye. Sometimes there are types of tampering in the metadata, things that you cannot view as an individual that we can find with a machine solution. So that's sort of file tampering, if you will. The other big bucket of fraud, suspicious activity is anomalies in the math inherent to these documents. So we call those algorithmic checks. So we are constantly looking at whether the math on a document ties out wherever it's possible. For example, on bank statements and pay stubs and W-2s, there's lots of math to look at. So on bank statements, we can find things like unreconciled balances. We can look at funky things happening in withholdings not being correct on pay stubs and taxes looking incorrect on W-2. So that is really unique to being able to parse the data with perfect accuracy. And that really brings me to what makes our product unique at Ocrolus. There's a couple things. So one is that ability to perfectly analyze and parse the data on a document with perfect accuracy. That is unique to Ocrolus. That is our core capability, and it allows us to come up with these signals on documents that are really contextualized. We're able to understand, for example, what belongs on a bank statement specifically, what belongs on a pay stub specifically, where you should be looking for transaction data or withholdings or taxes. We have to understand the inherent qualities of the document and be able to pick apart every field on that document to really surface the signal to you and understand what might be out of place and why. So that's really critical, is a deep understanding of those documents. We're also typically very focused on lending. We do have customers who come from different backgrounds outside of lending who use our product. For example, we have folks in property management, prop tech, accounting and audit who use the product. That's great. We love that too. But the focus is really on lending. And I say that because that is what, again, gives us the specificity of the signals, is being focused on lending use cases and really being tailored to the documents that we see in the greatest volume in lending applications for SMB, consumer, and some mortgage. So bank statements, pay stubs, W-2s, those are high volume documents. A lot of tampering happens in those documents. That's why we are focused on them. And then the last thing, I guess, working from the bottom up here is ground truth. This is a really important point, and it's again, it's very special to Ocrolus. Fraud in general is hard to pinpoint. We're not privy to borrower intent. We don't necessarily know the outcome in all cases, but the lender does, and the borrower knows what their intent is. So how do you know if the tampering on a document truly was fraud or what the intention behind that tampering is? Well, something that's special to Ocrolus is that we've worked with clients to collect a sample of a ground truth where they actually tell us what the outcomes were, and we're able to refine our signals based on that data. We also have a feedback loop where we're constantly getting that information on actual outcomes and what our clients deem to be fraudulent or not fraudulent. And we use that infrastructure to constantly enhance our signals and make them better and make them more accurate over time. Again, I can't stress how unique that is and how important that is to really understanding fraud and making sure that your signals are accurate over time. All right, I'm going to pause there. Craig, any questions or things that I should jump in with at this point, or should I keep moving?
Let's see. It doesn't look like we have any questions yet, so I think we can keep moving.
Great. All right, so we also have a concept called the authenticity score, which I'm going to show you in just a second here. Why do we have an authenticity score? The authenticity score makes it easy to interpret all of the signals we give you on a document. Now, when you get a document and you receive back detect signals, you'll get a compilation of all the signals in the form of a nice, easy to digest authenticity score. And that tells you kind of how to interpret all of those signals. You can absolutely dig deep into the individual signals. You can like dig into where they were and what types of signals they were and how severe they were. But if you want a high level overview of how suspicious or trustworthy the document is, you can do that with our authenticity score. So we give you a book level authenticity score for the whole application, and we give you an authenticity score for the documents therein. And again, it gives you the context of what was tampered and like how confident we were that that particular item was tampered. And we like the score, which I'll show you in a second here. Well, we like this score because it also can help with making decisions based on thresholds. So here's a nice visualization of our authenticity score. In our dashboard, you can see these colors easily, and I'll show you that when I give you a quick demo. But you can also get this authenticity score result via API, and we simply give you a numeric score. No pretty colors included, but what we tell you is essentially this. We tell you the overall suspicious score of the document. And the lower the score, the more suspicious or less authentic the document is, versus a higher score means the document is more authentic. So fraud comes in many shades of gray, right? Which is kind of ironic because I'm looking at a rainbow colored chart here, but fraud comes in with a lot of nuance. And so these are cutoffs that we've used in terms of high, medium, low, and color codes we've used based on customer feedback. But every customer is going to have a different threshold for what they consider very suspicious or very not suspicious. So you can certainly use these thresholds at your discretion, but we kind of have a nice guide for you. But the way we think about sort of these more suspicious documents is like 30 and below. These kinds of indicators where you have account numbers being tampered, you have employee names being tampered, social security numbers being tampered, those are really suspicious. We call that pants on fire fraud, if you will, meaning there's really no good reason for someone to be doing that most of the time. And so the way many of our customers will use that information is they'll say, okay, if a score is 30 or below, I'm just going to toss it out. I'm not going to look at this application. I already know that this is ugly and I don't want to spend more time on it. And so that can help you streamline your fraud review process. Alternatively, you may want to spend more time taking a fine-tooth comb as a fraud analyst or an underwriter if you get a document that has I don't know, a 70 score perhaps, or an 80. 70, maybe the fields are misaligned, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the tampering was nefarious. It doesn't necessarily mean that something untoward happened. It could just be a discrepancy in the document, or a person had a reason to change something the way they did. Another note about scores in the 80 range is that is what we cap images at. A quick note on that is images are notoriously tricky for everybody in this industry, humans and machines alike. It's really, really hard to find fraud consistently on images. Now a lot of those math checks or those algorithmic signals I mentioned earlier, we can still provide on an image. But being able to find sort of the nuances in the metadata and the tampering that might have happened in the doc that's not visible, that's much more tricky in the images. A lot of the key metadata is stripped away when an image is converted, file's converted to an image, and that makes it harder to find all of those clues that we would typically look for when you're looking for suspicious activity in a doc. It's not impossible, it's just a harder thing to find. But I bring it up because we always tell customers the best practice is accepting ePDFs when you are accepting loan applications. There's always a risk in introducing images. And so we just say, look, we'll find everything we can find, but like at your own caution, know that we're going to cap the score at 80. And then very lastly, we have those higher score authentic documents. This means that we feel really good about a lot of the things that we're seeing in this document or not seeing. For instance, if you have a 95, a bank fingerprint, that means we were able to confirm the origin of the document, and we know that that bank statement did in fact come from Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America, and we didn't find any other negative signals. Again, you can use that to feel pretty confident, but you may still prefer to take a manual fine-tooth comb to take another look, but we try to make it easier on you. Cool.
Awesome. This is a good question in terms of like these thresholds not being a roll of the dice. How did Ocrolus come up with the thresholds from low, medium, high scores?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question because as I mentioned, there's some subjectivity in how every lender or property manager might use this data and how they might threshold. So a 30 is pretty consistently, we feel 30 and below is pretty consistently a suspicious or not so good document. And that data came from a lot of customer feedback, a lot of interviews, and the things that are correlated with a really low authenticity score, we pretty consistently heard from customers like these are things we really don't like to see on documents. Like we really worry when someone has tampered with the account number. So that's how that feedback came to us. Whereas, in some cases, customers said it doesn't bother me as much if certain transactions are tampered with, or for example, editing software. That's a tricky one. Editing software we find all the time. Someone edited something with Adobe PDF on the document. It doesn't mean that they were committing fraud. It could mean that they were putting a page number on the document. It could mean that they were initialing the document, that kind of thing. So there's a nuance there, but these thresholds probably came from customer feedback.
Another question that we just got in, do we ever see 100% authenticity scores?
We do not see 100% authenticity score. We have it here as sort of the end of the spectrum, but we don't actually score anything as 100. And we do that intentionally because we want to give fraud analysts, underwriters, confidence in a document, but we want them also to feel empowered to review the document as well. And so we never want to say something's perfectly okay or 100% fraud. Our goal is not to necessarily opine on what exactly is happening if something's fraudulent. We want to tell you if something's really suspicious and give the power back to the underwriter, fraud analyst, leasing agent to make the ultimate determination. So our goal is not to make the determination, it's to give you the information to make the ultimate determination.
Excellent. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box.
All right. Let's talk about some signals. In particular, I am going to dig into a book. Craig, I want to make sure folks can see my screen.
Yes, nice and clear.
Okay. All right, let me actually just show you a book list. So when you go into our dashboard, this is a dashboard. You also will get all this information, same exact information via API, but it's nice and easy to see in the dashboard. And many of our customers actually use both. So when you actually are in the dashboard and you've got all of your books uploaded, for instance, you can see the authenticity score of the book. A little tip is the authenticity score of the book is actually the lowest score document within the book. So if you have a bunch of documents with different scores within the book book defaults to the lowest score. So that is a nice way to help you kind of quickly sort through the scores. So when you open up your dashboard, what you will see is a automatic indication of signals that were found. And we'll tell you, we've got multiple books in this document. We'll tell you, for example, this particular document, this particular bank statement has a little flag by it. I know as a fraud analyst to go in and check this document. And what you could get right here, this is what I was sort of talking about earlier, the authenticity score. We display it in a nice panel. We tell you what the authenticity score is, the signals that we found, and the confidence level. The confidence level is really important because it tells you how severe or concerning that particular signal is. Now, for instance, here we noted we actually recovered an original version of the document. I think this is so cool because you can be pretty sure that when you found an original version of this document, there's something suspicious going on. There's something funky. There shouldn't be another version of this document out there. You want to have the only version of the document. So this is a very good indicator that this document is suspicious. And so that is what those confidence scores can be used to dig into. So we also show here there are dollar amount edits, and we show you exactly what was edited, the tampered text, the original text, and what happened. And so we also very clearly outline all the places where there was tampering. And we even show you the original fonts, for instance. Whenever we can, we show you in different highlighting colors the original font versus the changed font. So you can dig right into all of those details. Now, again, a lot of our customers will say, I don't need to dig into every single one of these details. Like, this is a lot. I just want to know the authenticity score. It's a 30. That's bad. I'm going to move on. And that's great, especially for these very low authenticity documents. But again, there's more nuance in those sort of middle scores, and you might want to see for yourself what was going on, and you may want to contact the borrower, you may want to dig in, and so you can apply that judgment. But we give you all the tools to do that and to have that information at your disposal. And so this is exactly what it looks like. And again, here we have editing software is detected. We found Adobe Acrobat. That's the most common one we tend to see, but again, doesn't always mean it's a bad thing. We just highlight it for you to have that information. Let me pause there really quick. Craig, any audience questions or things that we should address at this point?
No additional questions as of yet, but maybe one highlight, what documents do we support with Detect?
Yeah, we support bank statements, W-2s, and pay stubs. And the reason that we chose those documents are because those are the highest volume documents we receive, and they're very correlated to the important documents that are involved in lending applications. And they also tend to have the highest rates of tampering. So we see roughly 6%, 7% of bank statements that come through our system have some kind of tampering. That's huge if you are letting those bank statements kind of fly under the radar. You could be missing 6 to 7% of those cases that are actually suspicious.
We do have one more question too. When you showed us the recovered document, how does Ocrolus receive the recovered doc? It's a great question.
It's yeah, it's not so much that we receive it. It's not that someone sends it to us. It's that we're able to strip away the data and determine what the original document looks like. So if you kind of think about peeling back the layers on the document, we can sort of find all the instances of tampering and sort of peel off the things that were tampered and find what was underneath. That's kind of how you can think about it. And so what's underneath is a totally different document where there might be a different account holder name or a different address, but it's not that a second document was submitted, it's that we were able to peel away the layers that were tampered with.
Very cool.
And this is just another quick example while I'm in the dashboard. For example, a W-2 that we support, and we found a really goofy address, and we flagged this as a suspicious address. So suspicious address is an interesting signal because, again, there's a lot of nuance in this, and the address could be completely fabricated, but the address also could be simply missing a unit number, or could be slightly different from the address listed in the US Postal Service. We check this against a database of the US Postal Service, as well as millions of other recorded addresses to let you know if we find a discrepancy. So again, we flag this. It doesn't automatically mean the document is fraudulent or something really untoward was going on here. We just let you know this might be an incorrect address, and you can follow up with the borrower or dig into why this address was suspicious, and you can decide for yourself what you'd like to do with that information. In case we're getting any other questions.
Yeah, we do have one question. There are also image-based PDFs. Is there any work in progress to improve detect on those types of documents, or will this always be hard to run to detect on those image-based PDFs?
It's a really good question, because you're thinking the way that we're thinking here on the product team at Ocrolus. I would say this is like a sort of really, really challenging technical problem, and it's like a huge problem for our customers, and it has evolved because fraudsters are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they're finding sneakier and sneakier things to do with advanced technology. Images are certainly something that where we have some coverage on. So I want to be clear that we have some coverage, because we can always interpret the mathematical signals on those images. So we want to be clear that's always doable, and we do provide those signals wherever possible when there's discrepancies in the math on those image-based files, if it's a bank statement, PDF, or pay stub or W-2. The trickier thing is the R&D involved in determining all the different ways an image can be tampered, and whether you can programmatically find it as a machine or even as a human. So we work with our customers to ask them to give us advice from their fraud teams on how they're treating images. And many of them have said, we don't even accept images because it's too tricky for any machine or human solution to be able to find what's going on these images. And so for now, although we continue to think about how we could solve that problem, we work with customers, we're constantly doing R&D. We just want to be very clear that you are accepting risk in your business if you're accepting images as part of an application. And so it's not a best practice. Understand that sometimes it does have to happen. That's how applications are submitted, but just be aware of the risks there.
Absolutely. Is there any chance customers will eventually be able to have the option to print a detect report when there are alerts found?
Oh, that's interesting. I would love to know more about the use case. Certainly something we consider on the roadmap, and this is why I love the feedback, because we can dig in and take it back as an item for us to consider. It's certainly a possibility, and I would just say, if you want to talk more about it, get in touch. I'd love to understand the use case or how you're using that printout of a detect report. Maybe we can talk about other things we can do to, like, make your life easier, make your fraud review easier.
Excellent.
What else do we have, Craig?
Looks like that's all of our questions for right now.
Well, I appreciate that it's lunchtime for many of us, at least those of us on the East Coast, but so I don't want to keep you any later than you signed up to be here. But I do want to say we love the feedback. We love the questions on Detect. It's a very nuanced product, and fraud is a really tricky problem. So please get in touch with us. I'm always happy to talk to you more about Detect, to listen to your ideas, to get feedback. You know, we really get our best ideas from our customers. So please get in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nike. And for everyone, stay tuned for our next product pulse happening next month. Thank you so much.